Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Open University.
Hello my dear friends and students, welcome to Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Open University Ahmedabad in the Chaitanya studio of Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Open University Ahmedabad. Here we are concerned with the study of subject called economics in the course of BBA in the video series lecture. Let's begin, or we can say continue our journey with respect to the introduction of economics, or we can say the basics of economics. In the previous session, my dear friends, we studied that the introduction part of the economics, then different types of definitions of the economics and the scope of economics. And for continuing that study, let's begin, or we can say continue our study of the microeconomics. The meaning of microeconomics, my dear friends. The microeconomics deals with the small part of a small components of the national economy of a country. It is concerned with the specific economic unit and a detailed consideration of the behavior of these individual units. For example, we may be studying in an individual consumer behavior or that of an individual firm or what happens in any particular industry. If we are analyzing the price in microeconomics, what we will study is the price of any particular product or a particular factor of production, or not the general price level in the economy. Similarly, if it is a demand that we are analyzing in the microeconomics, it is the demand of individual or of an industry that is under the study and not an aggregate demand of the entire community. In respect of the employment, it is the employment in a firm or in an industry that is studied the microeconomics and not the aggregate employment as the whole of the economy. Now let us examine the merits of microeconomics. Microeconomics has acquired a lot of importance in economic analysis. It is useful for both practical as well as, my dear friends, theoretical way also. The merit can be realized from the following different points. The first point is that working of a free economy, then formulation or framing of a policy, then allocation and utilization of resources. It guided the business community, then it serves as the basis of predictions, then it's a public finance also, then international trade, and it serves as the basis of the welfare economy. So these are, my dear friends, the merits of microeconomy. Now when we are talked about that the microeconomics merit, then we have to consider few demerits also. So let us examine the demerits of the microeconomics. Through this, the approach is very useful in the various aspects mentioned as above. It suffers from the following limitations, or we can say the demerits of the microeconomy. The first is that is an unrealistic assumption. Then the laissez-faire philosophy as basis, that is a market oriented, my dear friends. This philosophy that means market oriented. Then the marginalization is there, inadequacy are there, and misleading conclusions are also there. So these are the limitations with respect to, my dear friends, microeconomics. Where there is an advantage at that point of time, my dear friends, remember there are some limitations also. And with respect to this microeconomics, these are the limitations. Now let us move to the macroeconomics point, where we are talked about the macroeconomics, as the macroeconomics defined that the whole, the economic activity as a whole. So while we defining that the macroeconomy, that the macroeconomics is the word macros, is derived from the Greek word, my dear friends, macros, meaning that a large. And therefore, my dear friends, macroeconomics is a concern with the economic activities as a whole. So that's why we can call that the whole economic activities considered in what, my dear friends, in a macroeconomics. Then we discussed that the merits of the macroeconomics. Now, the analysis of macroeconomics has a unique theoretical as well as the practical significance over there, and its merit are as differentiated the below, or we can say the following manner. The first merit is that it provides an explorations of the functioning of the economics in general, then empirical evidences over there, then a policy oriented science, my dear friend, then understanding the national income approach. Why they are talking about the national income? Because it's a large scale data. Then income and employment theory and the monetary theories are also defined there. Then the dynamic science over there. So these are, my dear friends, what the merits of macroeconomics. Now, when we are talked about that the merits of macroeconomics, then we have the few demerits, or we can say the limitations of macroeconomics. So although the macroeconomics approaches are useful in a certain respect, or we can say in a large scale, or we can say in a big scale as an economic activity as a whole, so the following are the demerits, or we can say the limitations of macroeconomics. The first demerit or limitation is disregarded for the individuals. It's a disregard, or we can say the disregarded all the individuals talking about. It's a provided as a whole. So they are not talking about that individual, they are talking about the whole group, or we can say the whole country. So where there is a large number of scale, or we can say the large scale discussion over there, at that point of time, which activity should be there? There is a macroeconomic activity should be there. Then individual, the differences are ignored. So ultimately these are the talk about the large scale data, or we can say the activities as a large as a whole. So these are not considered the individual differences. It's ultimately discussion of what, my dear friends, the group, or we can say the large scale data. Then the accurate measurement is not possible. Why, my dear friends, accurate results are not possible? Just because of these, a number of data is a very large, or we can talk about that the large scale data, or the activities or analysis at a large level. At that point of time, my dear friend, there are some accuracy not measurable in nature, and that's why we can take this limitation as accurate measurement is not possible in this macroeconomic analysis. So these are the, my dear friends, demerits of macroeconomics. Now let us move to the another points, that is a specialized branch of economic studies. In the scope, we studied that there are the mainly divided into the in the modern economics, there are the two ways there, or we can say the two types or two parts over there, that is a microeconomics and macroeconomics. But while we are talking about that the specialized economic branch, or we can say the specialized branch of economic study, then, my dear friends, it is not only deal with that the micro and macroeconomics. It ultimate defined in a different way also, in a different branches, approaches also are there. So in addition to the micro and macroeconomics, the many specialized branch of economics have come up over the time because of the growing needs for we can say the intensive and extensive study of certain aspects of micro or macroeconomics. And some of the major specialized field of economics studied are differentiated as defined, or we can say the below are that particular descriptions over there. So first point, or we can say this first specialized branch of the economic study is that economics of development. My dear friends, when we are talking about economics of development, at that point of time, you we can say that you must be considered the micro as well as the macro economics while you are talking about the economic development, but the major role played by the macroeconomics. And thus, my dear friends, we can say that the economic development is a special branch of the economic study where the development plans are considered and the economic development studies over there. Then the public economics is defined that the whole economics, public at a large scale. So ultimately, my dear friends, this defined in a which section, that is a macroeconomics, and which is only and only based on the, we can say, the large scale. So ultimately, this is also another specialized branch of the economic study, that is a public finance, or we can say the public economics. Then the monetary economics, like RBI, they are talking about that monetary funds, or we can say the IMF, the International Monetary Funds over there. So these are also talk about that the monetary economics. Then international economics. Say for example, if we are talking about that in international economics over there, then the economics are not only the derive with your country only, it's also expanding to the globalization way also and the global world also. So when we are talking about the globalize, or we can say the worldwide, then that the international economics are considered in that manner. Then industrial economics, where there are some different position, or we can say the different approaches of the industrial laws are there, economics laws are there. At that point of time, my dear friends, the industrial laws, or we can say the industrial economics, play an important role for developing one industry in particular zone. Then the labor economics also considered. Then the electronics, or we can say the econometrics also. Then economic history also play an important role. Then the history of the economic thoughts. Then comparative economic system with the other way, that is a micro as well as macro. Then the, we can say, the regional economics. Then industrial finance. Then environmental economic. Then managerial economics are also there. As, or we can say that the economics is not only studied, or we can say that the economics is subject over that not only consider the only economics points, it has also the relation with the other field also, like management, accountancy, finance, tax. These all are considered in the direct relationship with that economics subjects over there. Then we talked about that the nature of economics. In order to study the nature of economics, we have answered a certain questions. The first question is that, is economics a science? And second question is, if it is a science, then what kind of science it is? If you gave these two answers at that time, at that point of time, my dear friends, you defined that nature of economics. So let us discuss the first question, that is economics a science? It has been accepted that economics is a science. According to the Marshall, economics is a social science, while according to Robinson, economics is a human science. And here we shall define the science. So science is what, my dear friend? Systematic presentation of any subject. With the help of science, certain theories and principles are presented and the problem in the life of man are solved. For example, my dear friends, Marshall formulated the law of demand for the formulation of these laws. And Marshall observed that the behavior of the people concerning the change in a price and the quantity demand, he tried to collect the statistical information regarding the prices of different commodities and quantity demanded. He also tried to identify the economic problem throughout this his definition. So what kind of science is the economy? The economics is a social science. First question is whether there is a science. Answer is yes. Second question is which, or we can say the what kind of science. Then, my dear friends, is nothing but it's a social science. These are, or we can say there are the social science, or we can say the different social science are there. For example, histories are there, politics are there, psychologies are there, the ethics are there, And the subject matter of social science is study of a human behavior. In a different aspect of the human behavior are studied in what we can say that in a social science. So economics is a social science and we have to study the economic behavior of an individual. It's related to the satisfaction of unlimited wants with the help of scarce resources which have alternative uses. Now just remember my dear friends, which definition gives these words? Can you remember it? Yes or no? Yes, sir. In which definition? Sir, Robinson's, Lord Robinson's, Leon Robinson's defined that there is a scarcity definition of Robinson's defined these words like scarce resources and alternative uses, unlimited wants of the human. So, man is a member of a society. He has to undertake a various economics activities like production, distribution, consumption, price determination, etc. In all this economic activity, human behavior is involved. It shows that the act economics fulfilled the subject matter of social science and therefore economics is a social science, my dear friend. So if we are talking about that, the economics is a social science, then you have to study this and you have to write this answer in a precise manner. So here we conclude that there are the nature when you have to give the few questions answer whether the economics is a science. Answer is yes. Then what kind of science it is? So my dear friends, it's a social science. Let's move to the another discussion point, that is nature of economic law. In previous session, or we can say in previous slide, we discussed that nature of economy. Now we determine that nature of economic laws. The economic laws are like the law of the science of both. The law establish the relationship between the causes and effects, and the economic laws are those laws or statements which indicate the general tendency of economic behavior of a man. Then ultimately it's defined what, my dear friend? That is a general tendency of a particular man, or we can say of the economic behavior of particular man. In order to explain the meaning of economic law, we shall give here the two important definitions of economic laws. According to the Professor Marshall, economic law or a statement of economic tendency are those laws, social laws, which relate to the branch of a conduct in which the strength of the motive is chiefly the concern can be measured by the money price. So ultimately, when we are talking about that particular social science definition, or we can say the economic law, at that point of time, the measurement in the money price. Is it clear? Yes or no? So according to the Professor Robinson, the economic laws are the statement to uniformities about the human behavior concerning the disposal of scarce means with the alternative users, or we can say the uses for the achievement of the ends that are the unlimited. So here we can say that the economics law defined as per the two major economist definition, that is Robinson's as well as the Professor Marshall's definitions. Okay, my dear friends. Then the main characteristics of the economic laws are as under. The first is the statement, or we can say the law of economics is a tendency in a nature. Then the economic laws are less exact than the law of the physical science. Then the law of economics are more exact than the law of the other social science. Then the economic laws are the hypothetically. Then the man is not bound to follow the economic law. And some economic laws are universal while some economics laws are the relative. So where at that point of time, my dear friends, you have to define whether that economic law are universal in a nature, or we can say in a relative in a nature. So at that point of time you define according to their aspects of economic, and aspects accordingly you have to define what, my dear friends? Economical law, or we can say the nature of economic laws. The next problem, or we can say the next topic, is that problem of economics. What is the economic problem? First question in your mindset, that's okay, we are talking about that problems of economics, but what kind of problem? Ultimately, first you have what we define that, sir, problem, but which type of problem, what kind of problem? Economics is a problem? No, my dear friend, the problem of economics. Yes or no? So, in a view to the scarcity of means at our disposal and multiple ends, we have to achieve. The economic problem lies in making the best use of our resources. And with the limited amount of money that a consumer has, he must try to get the maximum satisfaction, and that is his problem. And similarly, a producer must try to maximize his profit from the limited resources at his disposal. So these are the problems which are concerning with, my dear friends, economic. And hence, economic problem lies in making decisions regarding the ends to be pursued or wants to be satisfied and goods to be produced, and as regarded the means to be the used for the achievement for those ends. Now just think about that, where you define this type of words in a nature, in which we can say in which definitions. Remember it, my dear student. At that point of time, you know that the what kind of economic problems are there. It's related to man also, money also, the scarce resources also. So it considered all four different definitions. Yes or no, my dear friends? So then, how an economic problem arises? The economic problems arises because of the multiplicity of the ends to be the pursued, and the scarcity of means at our disposal and the alternative uses to which this means can be put. And it follows from the Robinson's definition of economics that whatever, or we can say the wherever the ends are many and the means are scarce and the means are capable to the alternative uses, the economic problem must arise. When the human wants are more but resources are scarce, at that point of time the alternatives are arised, and at that point of time the economic problem must be arise in a nature, my dear friends. And thus economic problem arise because the ends are many or unlimited, and ends are the varying importance, or the wants are the different urgency, and the means, that is the resources, are scarce or limited in a quantity, and scarce means are the capable for the alternative users or can be the put in the any number of uses. And these are the four conditions, my dear friends, which must exist before the economic problem can arise. And that is, there can be the no economic problem if either the wants are limited and or the resources are unlimited. Similarly, no economic problem can arise if the wants are uniform intensity and if means are specific and cannot be, we can say, the put into the any other uses. So what, my dear friends, here we define that how a economic problem arise in a nature. And while you deal with this particular lecture or particular this video, then you have to evaluate yourself in a three sections, my dear friends. The first section is that you have to define, or we can say you have to write this aspect, the long question. The long question, there is a first long question is, my dear friend, write a note on the problem of economics. Then distinguish, or we can say the difference between the micro and macroeconomics. Here you define both merit, demerits also, the both way, that is micro also and macro also. In the second aspect of your evaluation, that considered as a short questions, and the give that the any two merits and demerits of macroeconomics and the demerits and demerits of the microeconomics. Here there are some typographical mistake over there, my dear friends. So you just consider that the second question is with respect to not macroeconomics, is a microeconomics. So give any two merits and demerits of microeconomics. Then the third aspect of your evaluation, that is a multiple choice question, and here the first multiple choice question is that according to which economics laws are essentially hypothetically. So Professor Seligman defines that economics law are the essential for the hypothetically. Then second question is which Khalidash, that is a deal with what is the economic behavior of a man in a practical life. Then the economics laws deal with the what kind of economics behavior of a man in practical life. After evaluating this three section, if you want to read further or further reading, then you may refer this five books also or reference books also over there. So ultimately you define yourself in a great manner, you evaluate yourself with these three aspects as well as the further reading. So kindly consider it in a serious way. Hope you learn this particular subject in a lucid manner, or we can say the lucid language or layman language, so you can easily understand what are that basics of economics and what are the importance of different types of economics with the specialized branch. And for that, my dear friends, for a management student, or we can say that as a management student, you have to study economics in a very vast way, in a very wild way. And just because of that, after study this economic subject, you may take an appropriate decision for your firm, or we can say the for your and we can say the company also. So hope you learn well in this session. So thank you very much. Here I conclude myself. Enjoy your study, enjoy your day. Thank you very much, my dear friends.
स्वाध्यायः परमं